Okay, it says we're live. I am going to be monitoring the chat. So if we end up having some folks that are watching that have questions and decide to put those questions in the chat, because we have not yet figured out how to do call-in, like how to have folks call, then it might be a little off because of that time delay. However, we are good to get started. So I think, well, first of all, I want to thank Doreen for being able to join us again. We definitely missed you last week for episode 3, but it's nice having you back because you have such a fun presence.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. And we're very excited that this week for episode 4, we have Jan LeMay. And when we get started, I'm just going to go ahead and ask Jan to introduce himself to everybody so folks know who he is and how he's involved with the II and forensics.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And first, let me just give you this disclaimer. I know that you guys have done some minutiae trois in the past, but this is actually my first minutiae trois, and I'm a little nervous about it. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll both be satisfied. That's all I can hope for. You picked the name, you had to expect some innuendo, right?
Doreen actually created that name, as far as I know. She has a little funny story that goes with it, but I just thought it was so cute, so we decided to use it for our podcast name. Because the idea was that we were going to have Doreen and myself, which are two minutia, and then we would have the third, which would be the guest, whoever is going to present with us, and so that would be the 3. So,
well, I couldn't let it pass without some innuendo.
So that was the whole thing. It's cute. Doreen kind of came up with it a few years back, and it's always been a bit of a running joke with us. So we decided to use it. Yeah, she did a good job putting that one together.
Well, my name is Jan LeMay, for those who don't know me, and I'm a forensic scientist with the Denver Police Department Crime Lab, latent prints, and footwear and tire. Prior to that, I worked for the Weld County Sheriff's Office for 27 years. Long history with them. I started as a corrections officer in 1993 and did that for 2 years, then was a patrol officer for 4 years. Realized I didn't like being a cop, but I liked the technical side of the job. So an opportunity came up for me in 1999 to move into the crime lab. And I worked in their lab from 1999 until 5 years ago, doing crime scenes for a long time. And then, of course, latent prints and footwear and tire also. I'm been involved with the Rocky Mountain Division of the IAI and the parent body since 1999. I was president of the Rocky Mountain Division in 2007, and I'm currently the first VP of the parent body. I was first elected to the IAI Board of Directors in 2014, and just been a long career of service in those organizations. It's been really fun and really rewarding. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to pay back all that I've gotten from those organizations. And the more I serve, the more I get back in return. So I'm just always behind in trying to give back to the organization.
Well, that's good. It's always good to give back.
Yeah, well, they've done so much for me over the years. Without the IAI and the Rocky Mountain Division, I wouldn't have any mentors. I wouldn't have trainers, people who helped me and taught me along the way. So I owe a tremendous debt to those organizations for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And mentorship is so important. I think without it, you really do struggle to kind of get your footing. So I was very lucky that in my training phase, I did have folks that reached out and assisted me and served as a mentor for me. And now that I'm kind of a little bit past my halfway point in my career, I recognize that it's important for me to do the same for folks that are coming into the field now. So I try to give when I can, because I'm remembering the folks that gave to me. So you're right, the mentorship is a kind of a big deal, and I do think that more folks that are willing to provide their expertise to the newer generation are just continuing to spread that information, and I think it's a good thing for our community as a whole.
Yeah, and I think the experienced generation we gain from being those mentors and being the role models, we get back what we give and then some. So you're mentoring people that are coming up behind you, but you're gaining from that also in their energy and their enthusiasm, and they bring new ideas and new concepts and things that maybe us older people wouldn't think of. So there's reciprocity with that type of relationship that is so invaluable.
Yeah, because when I started, you didn't have CSI, and you didn't have really APHIS, and so when I started, there wasn't a lot of that mentoring available to me. So yeah, I am glad to see that we went down that path with the universities picking up the programs and stuff, and so now we do have more people mentoring. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we reached out to you, Jan, we had asked what kind of topics do you have passion about? What do you feel is one of the driving issues that you would like to discuss for this particular episode? And you referenced resiliency.
Yes.
And you had some information related to resiliency and how maybe some of that information is going to be I don't know, maybe put out by the II to kind of help the folks that are in our field and might be struggling a little bit with maybe some mental health concerns or trauma or stress. And so can you kind of give us a little bit of background information about how you got into this particular topic and how it became one of your passion projects?
Yeah, and first, let me thank you for giving me this platform, because it is really important to me, and it's a very personal subject to me. And so I'm in a fortunate position now with the II where it's an initiative that I am able to advance within the organization, and hopefully in the long run, we'll be able to do more to serve our forensics community when it comes to resiliency. And I'll tell you the reason why it matters so much to me. It's from my own personal experience, but I recognize that my experience isn't different from anybody else's. We all are exposed to a lot of trauma, a lot of psychological stress on the job. And I think back to the 4 years that I was a patrol officer and some of the things that I had to be exposed to working as a first responder. And then as a crime scene investigator for 17 years as the secondary responder, having to go and deal with the aftermath of all of these incidents. And then all the time that I've spent on the bench as a forensic scientist, it's vicarious trauma. We still have to look at the crime scene photos. We hear all the stories and deal with all the evidence. So we're still exposed to really the worst that society has to offer, all the bad things that people are doing to each other. We're exposed to it on a daily basis. Every one of us are. And I got to a point a couple of years ago where I realized, and I guess it was an awakening for me, I realized that I wasn't really dealing with that trauma and that stress at all. And a couple things happened. One was I met someone and we were just having a conversation. And in a conversation, when you're meeting, getting to know someone, you always ask, what do you do? And he asked me what I did for a living. And I told him I was a forensic scientist. And he said, oh, I bet you've got some really gory stories. And the poor guy, I went off on him. I said, if I just told you I was a combat veteran, you wouldn't be asking me to tell you my gory stories. Those stories are for me and the victim and my God, and I don't share them with anyone, especially you. And I had to track him down later and apologize because my reaction was obviously out of balance. It wasn't an inappropriate question, but my reaction was way out of balance. And then shortly after that, I went to a movie with my mother and my aunt, and I'm sitting in the theater flanked by them on both sides. And we're watching the movie A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Good movie.
Yeah. So there are 3 scenes in the movie where he tries to commit suicide. One by hanging himself, one by attempting to shoot himself, and then a third time by trying to gas himself in his car in his garage.
That's right.
And I'm sitting there in the theater, and we're watching this movie and watching these scenes. I'm just flashing back to all of these suicide scenes that I had to work. And I wanted to get up out of that theater and run, but I'm sitting with my mother and my aunt, and I can't do that. So we left the theater after the movie, and they were like, oh, that was a really good movie. I want to see that again. And I'm like, it was a really good movie. And I went home, you guys, and I didn't get off the couch for 2 days. I just did. It sunk me into such a deep depression that I couldn't even get off the couch.
Wow.
And that's when I finally recognized, okay, I've got something here going on that I need to deal with. And so I went to a therapist and worked on some PTSD issues that I think I knew were there, but maybe I was suppressing them or just not really addressing them. So if I'm struggling like that, Lord knows so many other people in our field are, people who are crime scene investigators and bench scientists. And I can share with you some studies that have been done. And sorry if I'm running off at the mouth, but
no, you're doing great. No,
passionate about it.
great. Yeah.
But there was a study done not too long ago, and it showed that the majority of crime scene investigators exhibit negative beliefs about themselves and others and the world. They feel hypervigilant. 38% said they cope by drinking.
Yeah.
Another study showed that 37% of the CSI surveyed felt that their mistakes were much more visible than their law enforcement counterparts. 60% felt they didn't have enough manpower to do their job, and only 36% felt appreciated. And there was another study that showed that it was a study on variable heart rate, and it showed that CSIs are in a constant state of physical stress. Can you imagine having a job that puts you in a constant state of physical stress 7 days a week? Obviously no job should do that to a person. There's other studies that show that when fingerprint examiners are fatigued and highly stressed, their decision making is severely impacted. I can relate to that. I think about errors that I made on the bench, and it's usually because I was burned out and stressed out. Digital evidence examiners spend more than 31 hours a week on internet crimes against children. Talk about a tough job. I can't imagine doing that job.
I couldn't do that. I don't think I could.
So naturally, they have much higher levels of trauma than other digital evidence examiners. Continuing on with these studies, burnout, has proven to result in low life satisfaction and high levels of depression. And in a study of 419 field and bench forensic scientists, all experienced similar levels of burnout. And they noted excessive workload, quick turnaround times, testifying, and pressure to produce error-free work as contributors to their stress. And when it comes to vicarious trauma, 47% of the respondents exhibited higher than average vicarious trauma, and people who work at crime scenes were much more likely to exhibit very high levels of vicarious trauma. And even crime lab managers, quality assurance personnel, and evidence custodians, they're all exposed to high levels of vicarious trauma. So it's not just the CSIs, it's everybody in the lab, everybody at your law enforcement agency, everyone's records, people that work in records who have to read and transcribe reports, they're exposed to all of that as well. So like I said, it's not just me. I know that my experience is not just anecdotal. We all are exposed to it. And so if I'm struggling with it, I'm sure other members of the IEI are struggling with it. And that's why I really want to advance initiatives to help our members deal with that stress so that they don't burn out and quit while they're young. And we're in the top 3 in 3 very dubious categories. We're in the top 3 in alcoholism, we're in the top 3 in divorce, and in the top 3 in suicide, tragically. So we as an organization, the IAI, can be doing, I think, a lot more for our members to help them cope with the psychological stress and the trauma that we're all exposed to, every one of us, and we can't deny.
Those are some scary numbers. My goodness. You said, so the forensics professionals are in the top 3 for like suicide. Do you know what the other professions are that are up there with them?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, and the reason I'm asking is because, for example, I'm married to a police officer, and we've been married for 22 or 23 years. And it's very stressful because he's not home regularly, and then I'm not home, and it makes things really complicated. So I was wondering if the top 3 were almost all like fire, police, EMS, forensics, if it was all kind of related, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think mental health professionals are high up on that list as well, because they're absorbing everyone else's issues and everyone else's stress. So I think mental health professionals are way up there also. Yeah, I think it's law enforcement, first responders, fire. very, very stressful jobs, obviously.
Yeah. Last week I wasn't here. Last week my brother passed away after a long
Oh, I'm
battle with
sorry.
cancer. Yeah, and the day before he passed away, my niece is a detective in Ohio, in the city in Ohio, and there was an officer involved shooting, and one of the officers was killed in there. So her department handled the case. Okay, so they had to go in neighboring city. So they went in and handled the case, and she's 28, I think. So with that happening and losing an officer so close to her, and then with her uncle passing, then she's worried about her mother, and then my mom and dad are still alive. So besides her handling the case, you never think that there's also these other outside influences that are also impacting what their work is and how their outlook is and how they handle the case they're working on. There's a lot that's involved.
You're right. And we don't always think about that, but yeah, the job is stressful. The job is traumatic, but we also have crap in our personal lives. It is just piling layer upon layer. And again, more of my own personal experience, and I don't want this to be all about me, but at the time that I was dealing with a lot of stressful, traumatic crime scenes, my wife was also dying of cancer. She passed away in 2011. And it was shortly after she passed away that I reached a crossroads. I was standing at a threshold, and I thought to myself, if I see one more dead body, I might become one. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I was grateful that I had the support of my agency, and they told me I didn't have to do crime scenes anymore after that. But if they wanted me to keep doing that, that would have been the end of my career. There's no way I could have kept going after all of that. Yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear about your wife's passing, and I can imagine that must have been very challenging. How are you incorporating the topic of resiliency into the IAI and the organization?
Well, we plan on appointing a special committee, and the IAI president has the privilege of appointing special committees to address any initiative that they're passionate about. And if all goes according to my evil plan, on August 16th, I will become the IAI president. And so I get to appoint a special committee, and so we'll appoint a special committee on resiliency. And I'm cheating a little bit. I've already chosen the committee. I've already picked people that I want to serve on it. And it's people who have mental health professionals and people in law enforcement and forensics who have experience specifically with these issues. And one thing that I've thought about that I want to task them with is look into the possibility of the IAI having a peer support program. So a lot of us have peer support programs within our law enforcement agencies. But the problem that I see with those is that you're speaking to someone in your law enforcement agency. So do you really have confidentiality and anonymity? And I was just recently speaking to an associate of mine who works for a law enforcement agency in the Denver area. And we were talking about this, and he said that he used their peer support program at work. And just a few weeks later, he was hearing whispers in the hallway of the conversation that he had with that person in the peer support program. Yeah, so if the IAI had a program like that where you could call and not get counseling, not get therapy, but just call and talk to someone, a peer who can relate and understand what you're going through, then it could be a double-blind situation. The caller doesn't know who they're talking to, and the person taking the call doesn't know who they're talking to. So you really would have the confidence that this is anonymous and confidential, and maybe be willing to open up and use that resource, rely on that resource a little more. Historically, the IAI has had people come to our conferences and talk about resiliency and mental health, and some of the local divisions have people come to their conferences and address those issues as well, which is great. And I think we can and should do more of that. But beyond the conference, only this year we have 1,400, 1,500 people come to the conference, but we have 7,500 members. So the conference only reaches a small portion of our membership. What can we do 365 days a year beyond the conference to help our members? And that's what I really want this committee to explore is any type of program that we can do, peer support, sending people to trainings, doing webinars, anything like that that we can do to support our members, help them with their mental health, help them, prevent them from falling into those traps like alcoholism and relationship problems. And the average law enforcement career, my understanding, is only what, about 7 years?
Really?
Because people burn out. And so I want people to have long, productive, meaningful careers and then live long, happy, productive lives into their retirement years. So we as an organization, I know we can do more to help our members. And that would just be another great benefit of being a member of the II, is you can get that type of support.
I love the idea of creating that committee. That sounds like it's very much needed, first of all. And now that I think about it, I think I'm kind of surprised that maybe we hadn't thought about doing that in the past. So I think that's an excellent idea. I'm curious to know. So you kind of know, I think you can, from hearing your history and your background, you're familiar with some of maybe the symptoms of somebody who's feeling stressed or somebody who's burned out. I'll tell you that there's times where I can maybe sense somebody who's not feeling all that well, but they're not saying anything. If you notice that in a coworker, you recognize some of the symptoms, but they're not willing to kind of say anything, what do you recommend people do? Do you recommend that you try to talk to them or leave them alone, or maybe talk to a supervisor? How do you help them when they are needing help but aren't reaching out for it?
Yeah, and another disclaimer, I'm no mental health professional,
right?
But just from my own experience, I know that some common signs of depression are the person that they're shutting down, they're isolating themselves, they're not talking to anybody. They may be having problems with productivity at work. They may be missing more work than they usually do. So I think these are some of the warning signs that might indicate that someone might be struggling with depression. And personally, my own thought is, yeah, by all means, reach out to them. If they're isolating themselves, I think that it means a lot to have someone just reach out. And again, my personal experience, when my wife and I were going through our difficult situation, it was never helpful when people would say platitudes, like, "Oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. Why do bad things happen to good people?" Well, you know what, bad things happen to everybody. That's just part of life. What meant the most to us was when people would just show up at the door, come over on a Saturday with a casserole and spend 10 minutes with us and give us a hug and tell us you love us and then leave. Those gestures, those simple gestures mean a lot. So if I had a coworker who I sensed was struggling and not opening up, I might just show up at their door uninvited one day with a casserole and say, "Hey, I'm here. And, I sense there's something going on with you, and I don't want to pry, but I want you to know that I'm here for you and I care about you and I love you, and any way I can support you, you know that you can trust me and I'll always be here for you." And a friend of mine who is a psychologist, I had a friend who committed suicide, and I saw this friend 4 days before he committed suicide. We went out to dinner, we went and watched the band together, and I didn't see any signs or I knew he was struggling with things in life. And so I was dealing with guilt. Like, did I not give him opportunities to talk to me? Did I not recognize some red flag that I should have recognized and acted upon? And I was talking to a friend of mine who was a clinical psychologist, and he said, you can ask someone, "How are you doing?" And they can give you the 2-second answer, or they can give you the 2-hour answer, and that's on them. So, we have to recognize that we can reach out to people and we can offer assistance and offer to be there for them, but they still have a responsibility to do something as well. But if there were safe, easy, accessible resources beyond within the walls of the confines of their law enforcement agency, maybe they would tap into those.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. We have a question that came through the chat.
Oh, great.
Viewer named Josh has submitted a question. It's a bit of it's a lengthy question, so he put it in sections. So I'll read it to you in its whole, and then we'll see if we need to kind of go back and revisit some of the parts. He says, my question is a little long, and the chat has a character limit, so I will parcel it out. Hi, Jan. I'm part of the IIDME committee, and thanks to your recommendation, I will be starting on the DEI committee in October, which I'm very appreciative of. I have a question related to professional resiliency and mental health. I work in forensic acoustics and am available for consulting. I am constantly getting inquiries from people with schizophrenia or paranoid delusions. They often report hearing voices that no one else can hear and want help. I recently spoke with a forensic entomologist who reported the same challenge, people wanting help with bugs under their skin. It's been a daily occurrence for both of us and the hardest part of our jobs. How do you suggest people in our profession deal with the empathy fatigue, especially when dealing with people that need our help, but who you can't ethically help?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot for me to try to unpack. Again, not being a mental health professional.
That's a lot.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I think that all we can do, those of us who, we don't have that expertise, we're peers, just offering support, being there for them, helping them seek out resources that may be able to help them. But yeah.
Going back and looking at his question, the way he asked, how do you suggest people in our profession deal with empathy fatigue? So I'm trying to interpret that as if he's feeling like maybe overwhelmed by hearing the same types of the same types of comments being made about these folks with the delusion. So how to deal with empathy fatigue?
Yeah, and
I be burned out from empathy fatigue, just like you can get burned out from any other kind of stressor, I would assume.
Right. Yeah, and a term that I'm more familiar with is compassion fatigue, where you are getting a lot of people coming to you and dumping on you, or one person who keeps dumping the same thing on you over and over again. Then I think that results in compassion fatigue. Yeah, and maybe there's a point where you have to set up healthy boundaries with that and say, listen, I'm empathetic with your situation and I'm sorry you're going through that. There's nothing I can directly do to help you other than offer my empathy. But maybe I can direct you to some resources that can help you.
Yeah, is that what you're hoping your committee will be able to do too? Is to be able to have resources to direct people to?
Yeah, I think so. I know that there are resources available, and that's something the committee will have to research. But outside of a peer support program, there's got to be other resources, mental health resources. A lot of our employers have EAP programs where we can get free counseling. One thing that has to be considered when it comes to any program with EII is liability. So, anything is going to have to be run by our legal advisor to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where there could be potential liability. But not being an expert, not being well informed on the subject, that's what the committee is going to research, there shouldn't be liability in just calling and talking to someone. Again, we're not offering counseling, we're not offering therapy, we're just offering support from a peer. So okay. I'm hoping that is a program that can and will be implemented in the future.
Do you still see there being a stigma around mental health when it comes to how we in our community deal with it? Do you still think that that's one of the blocks that prevents people from getting help?
Not as much today. 33 years ago when I started, yes, definitely. It was deemed that, it's just part of the job. It's what you signed up for. You just have to suck it up and deal with it. Now I think that there's much more understanding much more. We understand a lot better the the psychological trauma that we're exposed to. And I think that it's been destigmatized over the years. I don't think that it's reason for anyone to obviously be ashamed or embarrassed.
Right.
You're human beings, and no one can be exposed to what we're exposed to at crime scenes, in law enforcement, in forensics. No one can be exposed to that and be unaffected by it. And I think that we're really waking up and realizing that it's okay to be affected by it. It's okay to feel these things. And there'd be something wrong with you if you weren't feeling these things.
Right.
So I think in years past, I think there was stigma with it, but I think the community has become much more understanding of it and accepting of it, and destigmatized it over the years, for sure.
Do you think that there's a difference in how the newer generations, the younger folks, deal with these things as opposed to folks that are from a different upbringing, like the Gen X people versus the millennials versus Gen Z? Do you think that there's a difference in how they see the approach towards mental health? And
yeah, I do. I think that the older generation, my generation, we were just taught to suck it up. It's just part of the job. It's
absolutely.
It is what you signed up for, and you got to deal with it. So you deal with it by, crawling into a bottle and smacking your spouse and kicking the dog. And so, yeah, I think that the younger generations, the generations coming in now, are better prepared for it and more accepting of it. And I'm fortunate. I've been in positions where I get to meet a lot of students, a lot of young people coming into the field. And that's one thing I always emphasize is, before you even start in this profession, make sure you have a plan for dealing with the trauma and the stress that you're going to be exposed to. It's unavoidable. If you don't have a plan, if you're not prepared for it, you're going to deal with it in unhealthy ways. Yeah. So find healthy ways, healthy outlets for stress, playing sports, exercise, being in nature, maybe religion or something involving your faith. Talking to friends, talking to family, find healthy outlets for this stress and have a plan for dealing with it and be prepared for it. Because if you're not, it's going to be overwhelming. And
one thing that I've thought about is, as an instructor for some forensic science courses, I know that students sign up for some of the classes I teach because they see it on TV and they interpret it as being kind of easy, cool, it gets done quickly, and just that it's not as intense as it really is in real life. And so I don't know that necessarily the TV shows have helped with regard to the mental health thing, because once I kind of explain, this is what it's really like. I know this is what it looks like on TV, but this is what you really have to do. And these are the smells and these are the sights. Mm-hmm. And this is how it really feels to be in, this crime scene for 12, 15 hours with this decomposing person. I think sometimes they that's not for me. That's not for me. So I don't know. Have you noticed that there have been folks that have had interest in it because it looks glamorous, and then the reality turns out to be something totally unexpected?
Oh, absolutely. And you can talk about it with students and with young people in the field all you want, but until they experience it, they're not going to understand what it's really like. Like you said, dealing with a decomposed body and the things that you have to see, the things you have to smell, the things you have to touch. Yeah. You can't prepare yourself for that until you're really, or you don't understand it, I should say, until you're exposed to it. So you can talk about, go ahead, Doreen.
We had a crime scene technician that quit a couple of years ago, no fault of her own, but I think it was under these circumstances. I think she finally went to a suicide that she could just no longer handle. And the crime scene manager said to me, she goes, well, to do this job, you got to be a little, weird. You got to be a little freaked out, because in order to handle this, you got to, that morbid kind of side that, you can not embrace, but be aware of, and it not bother you. So.
But I think it also has a cumulative effect. At least it did for me, because when I started out, I thought it was cool. I liked it when the phone rang at 3 a.m. and I was going to go out and see something exciting, and it'd be challenging and interesting, and I would learn something new and have some experience that most people never get to experience.
Right.
So it was kind of exciting and fun in that respect. But I think over the years, it, like I said, it had a cumulative effect where just layer upon layer upon layer of traumatic experience to where it wasn't fun anymore. And I just didn't want to be exposed to it anymore.
Yeah.
Did you have one particular event that just kind of, you know, aside from watching the movie with your family, was there like one scene that you just replayed in your mind over and over and over, and that was maybe where you just kind of drew the line, or was it entirely cumulative and it was just a building up over time?
Yeah, there was a lot of little incidents that layered up. There were, when I look back, there were really four cases that I worked on that were really, really difficult. And I don't want to get into details here because I'll start crying and then we'll be on this call for another 2 hours. So, but yeah, there were a lot of, you know, a lot of specific scenes, but four in particular that really had an impact on me. And it all happened to kind of happen at about the same time that my wife was very ill also.
Mm.
So it was just a lot piled on me all at once, professionally and personally. And like we mentioned before, we all deal with the stress on the job, but we all have stuff at home too, relationship stuff, financial stuff, health stuff. We're all dealing with all of that at the same time that we're doing this really, really stressful job.
Right.
And so naturally, we're all going to have problems.
Yeah. I have in the back of my mind a few cases that just always stick with me, and I always think about them, and I always wonder how these folks were, how the family member, just how folks are doing. Like it, I don't stop thinking about it, even if it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I still wonder, how have things resolved? How are they? I hope they're okay, because it was, you know, trauma for me being on a scene or working something that was really intense, but I can't even imagine the experiences that the family members had to deal with, or you know, the folks that were there in the moment while it was happening had to deal with. But yeah, there's a few that stay stuck into the back of my mind that I just, you know, they're always going to live there. They're always going to live there. And I always think to myself also, the next time I work a case that's similar, the other experiences that I've had might help me think in a different way. I can maybe think a little bit more outside the box because I've had this experience. So maybe in some ways it's helpful, but yeah, there's a few things that you just don't forget. You just don't erase from your memory.
Right.
For sure. You got me thinking. I'm gonna look up something here. I'm not texting my girlfriend, I promise. My therapist recommended a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I'm going to give you the name of the author here.
That's amazing how many years ago something could have happened, and yet it's still so fresh in your mind.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the cases happened on Mother's Day.
Oh.
So one of those cases, every Mother's Day that comes up, I think about.
You think about it.
Oh. Yes, I think about that case. I think about the family. I think about the victim. Every Mother's Day since it's happened. And I was home. It was a Sunday. I was home and I got called in. So I come in and I start working this case. And I was just, at first I was like, man, it's Mother's Day. I want to be with my kids. And then as I got into the case and we started doing all this work, it started to hit me. It started to be like, man, it's Mother's Day, but that doesn't mean anything for me. What about them?
Yeah.
These victims, their families.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I read that the average person has 3 or 4 traumatic experiences in their lifetime. The average first responder, 400 to 600 traumatic experiences.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a little more than average.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
This book for everybody, it's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, Bessel, Bessel, Van, Van, der, Der, Kolk, Kolk.
Okay.
that the body keeps the score. And that was really helpful to me. It gave me perspective on my trauma and my stress. But yeah, you're right. There are some cases that I just couldn't disassociate from. Like for a lot of them, it was, I think my faith helped me a lot, because I believe that the body is just a vessel that we use to get around in for a while, and then the body dies and we move on. So when I'm at a scene, I'm looking at a body. That body is just a vessel. What made them a person isn't there anymore. But there were some scenes, like you were talking about, Rebecca, that I couldn't disassociate. I couldn't help but feel for the families and what they're going through. And geez, if that happened to my mother or my grandmother, how would that make me feel? And I start taking all of that on myself. And yeah, there's got to be healthier ways to deal with it.
And I think in some ways that kind of goes back to Josh's question regarding the empathy fatigue, because after so long of feeling that type of pain for what everybody else is experiencing, it starts to wear on you. You start to feel like I got to do something to block this, or it's going to continue to hurt my heart, and it's going to have an effect on me.
Right.
Right. And Josh, first of all, thank you for your service in the II, and I look forward to all the work on the DEI committee. I'm excited about that. But I also think that if maybe you're not, like as a crime scene investigator, I would go doing the crime scenes, but I wasn't dealing with the families and the people and the victims. But if you're a detective or someone who a victim advocate, someone who is working with the families directly, that's where I could see that compassion fatigue really becoming a burden, definitely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more time for the name of the author, because I put the book title in the chat, but I also want to make sure I got the author's name in there.
Yep, Bessel, Bessel.
Okay.
Van der Kolk. Not to be confused with John Vander Kolk.
Right.
Okay. I think I got it.
Okay.
That's awesome. All right. Very good. What do you think, Duran? You have some extra questions that you want to throw out, Jan, before we start getting ready to close down?
Not just yet. No, not just yet. I was trying to think if there was.
Actually, I do have just kind of one. When it comes to things like policy related to mental health or resiliency, or what do you think from a policy standpoint agencies can do to kind of help safeguard their employees when it comes to these scenarios? Do you feel there's any like guidance through a policy feature that can be used?
It's tough. I mean, you can mandate that people go to psychological debriefings after a critical incident. You can mandate that people see a therapist or psychologist. But the old story, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change, right? Yeah. So you can, and policy-wise, you can mandate those things, but if people aren't willing to really open up and take advantage of those resources, then they aren't really a benefit. But I think employers who want to retain their employees, I think they've got to look at resources that they can provide to help people have long, productive careers, because if you do it any amount of time, the burnout is a real problem.
Right. Most agencies do have something in place, right, to help their people now.
Yeah, and in the 33 years ago when I started, a lot of agencies didn't.
Right.
So I'm great. We've seen a shift in that culturally, and that's really, really positive.
I'm not doing crime scenes now, but I started my career as a crime scene person, and I went to a lot of those scenes. I don't remember ever getting called in to do any kind of follow-up with a psychologist or a therapist in any way. And I'll tell you, just recently, my agency had a situation where somebody, there was an accident in our facility, and somebody passed away. And there was, it seemed like the folks that were in the room when that happened were, I think they were very, there was a lot of information, like making sure they were taken care of. but I kind of felt like, oh my goodness, like what happened? You know, I was antsy, I was a little nervous because I didn't know exactly what was going on. And was I traumatized by that? No, I mean, I was way far away, but it still kind of felt like we didn't, at least those of us that weren't in the active environment at the time. Like there wasn't a lot of information about it. So every once in a while, I still feel like there's a disconnect.
Yeah, and I think back to a case that we had at my agency, and it was a really sad, really tragic, horrific case. And they did have a psychological debriefing. They brought in a psychiatrist or psychologist rather to talk to all of us. And it was mandatory. Everybody that was involved in that crime scene had to go. And some of us opened up and talked, and others just completely internalized it. And all of us had a hard time with it, but I think those of us who were more willing to open up and talk about it and share how it impacted us, I think we dealt with that a little better than those who tried to internalize it, pretend like they weren't bothered by it.
Yeah. I think being able to process those feelings and those emotions is it's hard to do in the moment, but I think it allows for the release of that internal stress once you can get it out. I feel like it's still there, and I think it's always going to be there, but it doesn't have as much power over you anymore at that point if you can process it. And that's what I think is a challenge, and where I think some of that stigma still may exist in the mental health arena.
Yeah. Well, you also got to get through, because us women, we are emotional. We can accept to be able to look at ourselves and handle things. But then you have your officers who are, you got to be tough, and they got to be strong, and they got to be able to willing to let their guard down and let other people in and talk about it. And I know that's hard for some of them.
Boy, not me. I'm a big crybaby mama's boy.
But one thing I have noticed, and probably y'all have noticed too, though, in the sworn world, it's still very male dominated, but the forensics world seems to have shifted, where we seem to have more ladies coming in and taking active roles.
Absolutely.
So I can kind of see how there's a balance where the manly men that are out in the fields, and patrolling, doing that stuff, are definitely going to see some of these traumatic experiences. But the ladies in the crime scene world, well, everybody in the crime scene, well, not just the ladies, but they're also going to have their own types of experiences.
Yeah.
Okay. We are right at about 48 minutes, so we're going to start shutting things down. I'm going to check really quickly and see if we have any additional questions in the chat.
Okay.
I don't see anything new that's popped up.
Question for you, Jan.
Yes.
If you do this committee, will this committee stay on even after you are done with your 1 year of presidency?
Well, that's the hope, and we'll just have to look at what they've discovered, what they've accomplished, and my hope is that hopefully it will become a permanent committee.
Right.
It's provisional for the time being, but if it's productive and they're doing meaningful work and really proving to be a benefit to the membership, then it could become a standing committee.
Okay. Are the people that you've already have in mind, are they really excited about this?
Yes. Yeah. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the passion is definitely there. I'm excited about it.
Okay. That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. I think, as I said before, it's a great idea. I'm not sure how we hadn't had that in the past, but I'm glad it's starting now for sure. But before we close out, Jan, do you have anything else you would like to say?
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity and the platform. It's something that's really important to me, obviously. So
right.
I just appreciate the chance to talk about it with everyone.
I wish you luck with the committee, and I just hope that, it does work and that people reach out and it's successful, because it is needed, like you said.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely a great idea. Looking forward to seeing that come together. I'm going to go ahead in the next second or two, pull out of our live stream. So give me just 2 seconds. For those of you that are on the live stream, or at least watching the recorded version, September's guest is going to be, at least it's planning to be, Mac Brazel. So if you have any interest in listening to what Mac has to say about training and training topics, don't hesitate to pop on the podcast so you can kind of keep up with what's going on there.
Right.
All right, folks, on the live stream, we're going to shut it down now.
All right.
And 2 seconds. Or not. It's got so many buttons.
She'll get it.
I'm getting there. Oh, hang on 1 second. There we go.
We're going to be here all night, I can tell.
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I was like, where's the